What's up YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video we're going to do a hot racing steel stub axle upgrade on the SCX24. So here I have the hot racing SXTF39W04 4mm steel drive stub axle SCX24 upgrade. So these axles, we're going to install them on the truck and we're going to have a wider stance on the truck so there's more stability when it kind of tilts and stuff like that. So this is a performance upgrade. I want to say it was about $20. I'm not too sure. But yeah, so I'm excited for this upgrade. Haven't done this one before, so it's going to be a learning process and we're going to learn together. Okay, so the wheels and the body are now off of the truck. The first thing you want to do is remove the hexes. So there's four. So there's four hexes right here on each axle. So simply just pull it off, a little plastic piece. Alright, so there's four hexes. We're going to put them off to the side. Keep them in a safe spot, don't want to lose them. Next thing we're going to do, we're going to grab our needle nose pliers. We're going to pull out the pins from the axles. So right there is a little pin, you can see it. Grab our needle nose. And just like that, there's our pin. So there should be 3 more on the truck, and we're going to put those to the side. So once you've pulled off all the hexes and all the pins, there are now 2 screws on each end of the axle. So there's one here and one here. So that's going to be on the rear axles. So we're going to unscrew those 2 screws, and then we're going to pull out the axle. So now we've pulled out the 4 screws on both sides of the axle, and now we're going to grab our pair of needle nose pliers and we're simply just going to gently pull out the axle. And so there it is. So along with the axle, you not only pulled it out, but you also pulled out a bearing. So we want to grab this bearing and put it to the side because we're going to be using that later. So now with the steel axle, we're just going to put it to the side because we're not going to use that anymore. And then we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Bam. So there it is. So there's the other axle. So now we're going to open up our hot racing axles. So when you open your set of axles, there's going to be 2 axles for the rear, which are the longer ones, and there's going to be the shorter ones, which are for the front. And then not only with that, there are going to be a set of spacers and these little screws and these little rings. We're not going to use those in today's video, but I believe if you had the hot racing weights, you would use those. So now we're just going to put that to the side. And we're going to get our new axle. Let's compare them. Let's compare them how long they are compared to the stock. So on the left, that's the Axial stock axle, and on the right is the hot racing upgraded axle. So it's a little bit longer. It's going to add some stability to the truck, widening the stance, which will be a great performance upgrade. So now we're going to get the hot racing axle and get our new bearing, and we're just going to put it on like that. Before we put this onto the truck, I'm gonna grab a little bit of some oil and we're gonna oil up that bearing real quick. So I have this oil gun right here. I'm not really too sure what kind of oil is in here. I'm just gonna put a little drop, put a big drop actually, of oil in the bearing. So there's quite a bit of oil. So there we are. Our bearing is oiled up. I'll put it on the axle. And so when installing it back into the truck, you're going to turn it and it should fall into place. Got to be gentle, but it will fall into place. Just take some patience and some wiggling around. There we go. I believe it falled into place. So there it is. So there is the axle with the bearing on the truck. And so we're gonna repeat the same process on the other side. So now that our bearings and our axles are installed, we're gonna grab these little spaces that were provided, and we're gonna put one around the axle. So there's one, and there's two. So now our spaces are on, and now we're gonna grab our pin that we gently put to the side. Grab our little pin. We're gonna put it in its hole. So once the pin is in, we're gonna grab our hex. And we're just gonna put that guy on, and so there you are. So it lines up perfectly with the spacer, there's no extra gap, and we know we have put it in all the way. So we're just gonna repeat the same thing on the other side. Alright, so now you have your spacer, your pins, and your hexes installed. And the last thing we have to do is remember our 4 screws that were back here, and we just install all 4 of them. And that'll hold our axle in when we're crawling. And there you are, the complete axle extension, 4mm, I believe, on each side, is now installed. So now we're gonna move to the front of the truck, where it's a little bit harder because we have to maneuver around this knuckle, but it shouldn't be too hard. It's a screw on top, screw down below, and just kind of pull it forward. And yeah, so we'll get into it. So there's one up top right here. There's one screw up top. One down below. And there's the knuckle. So there's one side of it. Both the screws on the bottom sides of both of these knuckles felt like they were stripped, so that's interesting. And there's the other side. We also got this link attached right here to the servo arm, so I'm just gonna undo that. Alright. So what's interesting is that these axle extensions are in the knuckle itself, so we simply just pop it out. Here is the stock axle on the left and the hot racing one on the right, so it's a little bit taller on the right side, just how we like it. So I'm gonna put that one to the side, and this one's pretty easy actually. I thought this one was gonna be a harder one, but it's actually the easier one. So I'm just gonna insert it. Oh, no, don't want to pop out that bearing. Bam, there's one side. So we simply just pop it out. Pop in the other one. Just like that. There's a little bit of sand and dirt on these bearings, so I'm just gonna hit it with a little oil. Probably a little bit too much. It's okay. And now we're just gonna reattach it. So right here on this axle, there's this pin right here. You gotta line up that pin with the slots on these axles. See how there's like a little bit of a slot? You gotta line it up. Shouldn't be too difficult. All right, so I changed my mind again. The front ones are a lot harder to put on. This little shaft, I guess, kind of popped out and it was kind of difficult for me to line up. So all I do is I just wiggle it around, and if I think I have it incorrectly, I just turn it on, run the truck, make sure that the shafts spin. If not, then I just kind of wiggle it around again and get that in place. So now that they're both in properly, we're now just gonna line up the slots with the pins. So now that we got both the shafts in the knuckles, we are gonna reassemble it on the truck. So when you wanna put it on, you wanna make sure that this little mounting point on the steering link is on top, not down below. That'll be backwards. You have to undo it. So make sure that this little mounting point is on top. So now we're simply just gonna line up our slot on the shaft with the shaft inside. You'll be able to feel it. And now it's lined up. And I'm just gonna screw on one side first because I don't think I'll be able to hold both sides at once since it's so delicate. So my angles were kind of weird, reassembling the steering links right here. So I just turned it on and then the servo kind of turned on and moved the arm further to the left. So I was able to connect it right here. So that's installed, knuckles are on. Now it's time for our spacers, don't want to forget those. Simply just grab the spacer, put it around like that, there's one. There's two. Then we're gonna grab our pins. There's one pin. There's the second pin. Then we're gonna grab our hexes. There's one. There's two. So there is the finished product. We added 4 millimeters of extra width on the axle on both sides. So that'll give us a little bit of a wider stance when crawling, which means more stability, which means less rollovers. So I think that's a great performance upgrade. So now I'm just gonna put on the wheels and tires and the body and we're gonna check this bad boy out. Alrighty, so there is the finished product. You can tell, not really on camera, but with the naked eye, you could tell that the stance is a little bit wider, for sure. I don't know if you can on camera, let me know if you can. But yeah, so there is the Jeep finished. So one thing I noticed when I was just wrapping things up and just wanted to test it, make sure everything was functioning, out of rookie mistake, these screws, see if I can get this body to stay up, these screws above the knuckle and below the knuckle, those are very important not to over tighten, because when they're too tight, the steering won't work. I made that mistake and I turned it on and I tried to steer the truck or even just make it move, and there was too much bind up front and it wouldn't move at all. So I realized that I needed to loosen those a little bit. And so it might be a little bit challenging to find the right way to tighten it, because those screws are sensitive. So that shows why those screws on the bottom were a little bit loose, because they're meant to be that way. So keep that in mind if you're running into issues there. But I'd keep an eye on that, because the next couple of times you run it, you want to make sure those screws aren't too loose, because you don't want to lose those. So yeah, that's something to keep an eye on. But overall, I like this upgrade. It wasn't too hard. It was a little bit challenging, maybe a medium difficulty. Nothing too crazy. I ran this Jeep a couple days ago, and it kept on flipping over. So I figured something like that would widen the stance would help out. I know lifting the Jeep and moving all the weight up high didn't really help out with that, which I know I probably did a little bit too prematurely. Probably should have added some weight and then lifted it. But I don't know. Next couple mods are going to be adding weight for sure. So I'm looking forward to that. Overall, great mod. I'm liking it. If you haven't already subscribed, definitely check out the channel. Doing this Jeep playlist currently. I already did a C10 playlist. So if you have any questions, let me know, comment below. Till next time, peace out.